Dr. Seubert with us, and we're going to have him walk us through his capital project requests. And then shortly after 10 o'clock, we'll move up the police department. So welcome, Greg.
All right. Well, thank you. I have just two projects, and they are both the same, just in different years, and that is vehicle purchase. We will be in need of replacing transit buses. We have 2009 diesel buses, and we have 2011 diesel buses, and they are getting to the point where we're going to have to start planning for replacement. And so those are the two items. For a number of years, there was a drought in federal money, and generally federal transit or federal funding pays about 80% of the total cost of these procurements. Federal money is back, and so I actually bumped these up a year. It's very difficult to procure these or pursue these procurements when there isn't federal money available, and now there is. So as I said, I bumped these up. So the procurement is fairly straightforward. The federal government pays 80% in this proposal, and the local share of the cost would be 20%. One of the challenges that we have when we procure things like this is we need to demonstrate a local commitment. So I encourage you to get these in the plan. I've proposed the first batch for 2023, and that means a local commitment has to be made in 2023 so that we could attain the federal funding and then pursue the procurement. Federal bus procurements are not like buying a car where we go to the lot and we pick one. They're all custom made. And so we initiate the process by placing an order, and then we get in line and we wait 12 to 18 to 24 months depending on the vendor. So it's a fairly lengthy process, but it starts with getting in a capital plan like this. And so that's the project.
So the amount that you had asked us to score for 2023, is that the 892,606 that you had originally had for 24? Because I see the total.
892, yes.
892, okay, so
Correct.
that's the amount that we would score for this year instead of next year.
For 2023.
Okay, because in the book, it shows on 24 and 26. So knowing that we're moving up, I'm just going to shift that over.
So we'd actually pay the money. So we have to demonstrate financial commitment in order to apply for a grant. So
Okay.
that's 2023. We wouldn't actually pay the money till 2024.
When we take possession.
So
we
we'd
get it
actually
within
have it, we could either approve it in 23 and fund it in 24, or we'd end up with carryover either way.
Right.
So, okay,
Right.
all right.
But without that local commitment, I can't initiate the rest of the process.
Right, and then we wouldn't qualify for funding and things if you don't have our share figured out,
Correct.
so. Okay, does anyone have questions for Greg on the buses? Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. We're replacing 9 buses. Has there been any thought, these are going to be clean diesel buses, is there any thought of going with a hybrid or an electric model, or?
Those are certainly, that is an option. We can discuss other technologies. I'm personally not in favor of the hybrid. And the hybrid produces energy to recharge the battery from the braking. And so if you don't use them in a type of service that generates enough to recharge the battery, then you end up running the bus off an undersized gas or diesel-powered engine. And so systems our size that don't do as much stopping and starting, like say a Madison would, have experienced worse fuel economy because they're relying more on the undersized gas engine instead of the battery.
So like, because of how our transit routes are structured, the hybrid technology really isn't a good fit?
Correct.
Okay.
And I would say the industry is moving toward battery electric. So if it were me, that's the direction that I would go in. So looking at the 2023 cost, I've projected a clean diesel bus at a little under 500,000, 496,000. A battery electric, Racine just got, I think, 9 battery electric, and those were at about $1 million apiece.
Okay, about double the cost.
Correct.
Okay.
The other challenge with battery electric at this point is they don't keep a charge for a full service day. So you may get most of a service day in the summer months, but in the winter months when you have to run a heater, it saps the battery by about 50% of its charge. So
you'd have to swap in another one at the halfway point.
correct. So you'd pay twice as much for the bus. You couldn't run it a full service day, so you'd have to carry extra buses to put in place when you had to bring it in for a charge.
Are they the same size? Or are
Yeah.
they, or is there an option for them to be smaller? I mean, people ask me, we've had the little bus versus big bus discussion so many times since I've been on the council, I can't count anymore, but I have always had, and knowing that we need the larger capacity for school. But we do also have some routes where that's less of an issue. And has the small bus technology improved in any way enough that we could have a mixture of size?
Well, the challenge is, as you said, the peak times, when we have standing loads. It's really not the technology, it's the durability of the smaller bus that's a challenge. So if you use a lighter duty bus in an application, and a heavy duty application, which is what fixed route bus service is, which is what we operate, you'll beat the thing to death pretty quickly.
Okay.
The useful life of the smaller buses under 29 feet is 8 or 10 years.
Okay.
Whereas a heavy-duty transit bus is a minimum of 12, and we generally push them to about 18, sometimes 20.
Okay.
So, again, it's the durability that's the issue. The other challenge with that is, if you need them at one size at one time a day and another size at another, there's this logistics problem you have in trying to get them in place. They don't move themselves, so
Right.
somebody's got to move them to get them in the hands of the driver who's already out there with the big bus. And so you end up with all kinds of labor costs moving buses around. And so it can be done, but it's a challenge. Additionally, you have to buy more buses. So if you need them at the peak, you have them. And then you need a secondary fleet for off-peak. And then you have to store them and insure them. And you start adding all that up, and the big bus seems to make a lot of sense.
Sure. Okay. Anyone else have questions on transit or bus replacement? If not, I think we're good. We'll score that accordingly. So,
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, and it looks like police, we've moved up to 10 o'clock, and they're here. So if you guys are ready to start a little early, we can start you guys at 10 till if you like. Switch our section of the book here to your section.
Thank you for being so flexible. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, of course. Captain Graham actually has a PowerPoint, if that,
That's-
are we able to plug
could-
that in
yeah,
and get that up and running? That
get
might
that
take a couple
going
of
if-
minutes, but,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
all right, yep, we'll get our technology ready here and.
Geez, there's so much equipment up here.
I was gonna say, as long as it all cooperates, right?
Got some fruit, healthy snacks for us and everything, that's awesome.
Start the computer.
It's a bunch of,
Okay.
lights on anyway.
There you go. I think that, if it's not that one, it's this one. I don't know what that one's for.
Of 25 minutes scheduled for our presentation for our 3 CIP requests for the police department. We have a request in that we put in for a number of years, and that's for the start of construction for our range. We're working with other partners to see if there's other partners in our community, such as North Central Technical College, that might share in the cost of that. So the funding that we requested in that item is simply to really understand the scope of the project and determine what type of cost it would be to clear the property and what type of property and what size and scope there would be. So that's one of our requests. The other request is for sit-stand desks, and I think that's an ergonomic thing that is important for our staff. We do have some of those already, and we'd like to outfit our entire department with sit-stand desks. The priority, though, for us as a police department is flock safety. It's automatic license plate readers. And we're hearing from our professional network across the state the importance and the significance of this type of technology in solving crime. And so Captain Graham is the lead on this project for us at the police department, so he has a presentation prepared in regards to that technology, and we can certainly answer questions and take comments at the end in regards to those other 2 projects, but we'll have Captain Graham spend the time that we have allotted on flock safety and automatic license plate readers. So I'll turn it over to Ben with that.
Sounds good. We are.
Yes. Oh, so you're looking for pointers then, Ben? Or do you have one?
we
Will
need
it,
to-
will it work for both of them?
Does the room controller kill the lights that's on the screen as well?
Yes.
If not, I'll get up and run and do it over.
Screen.
I think this is
There we
changing
go.
this
Just so
one
we can see.
probably.
Okay. No, the clicker only advances one of.
Okay, so his will advance which one? It
think
doesn't
this
really
one.
matter. Okay, and then Emily will advance the other one. Okay. I
I just
am,
click on that one? Yes. Okay.
I'm double
Otherwise, you
booked
have to
at 10
click your-
o'clock, so I'm going to quick leave at 10 to attend another short meeting, and then I'll be back. Yeah.
Oh, it's actually. Otherwise, you just push the right arrows. Okay, yeah, I can handle that. Thanks.
All right, this doesn't seem to be advancing yet.
Okay.
So I might
You'll
have
just
to
nod at me and I will-
lean on you. I'm going to be doing a lot of nodding. You ready?
Ready?
All right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Chief, and thanks to each of you for doing a marathon of CIP requests this morning. So,
All in one day.
yes, I'm very passionate about the subject of flock safety, and I want to begin, if you want to go to the next slide, with sort of laying a foundation, and that every decision that we make, whether it's the mundane, everyday decision, or big decisions like bringing a CIP request before you, is filtered through 2 things. Number 1 is our vision, and number 2 is our mission. And I look at those two things differently. Our vision is sort of the destination. Where do we as a professional police agency want to arrive? What is our destination? And then the mission is kind of the vehicle. It's what gets us from where we are today to where we hope to be tomorrow. And if you want to advance the slide, our vision is we want to be regarded as the standard of excellence in policing. So whether it's a city on the East Coast, West Coast, down south, when they look at the way in which we police, the way in which we investigate crimes, the way in which we interact with the public, we want them to come away inspired that Wausau PD does a great job. They are professional, they are excellent, they are above reproach, they're leading the way. And that requires us to lead the way, right? And how does our mission factor into that? Like I said, it's the vehicle, and we strive for that excellence by doing what? Partnering with our community to enhance quality of life. So we have this excellence, we have this quality of life, and one thing that we're always doing is scanning and analyzing to look for gaps. Where are we? So if you want to advance to the next. There are oftentimes gaps that we find between where we are and where we hope to be with respect to excellence, where we hope to be with respect to helping individuals, helping neighborhoods, helping the community as a whole have an enhanced quality of life. So go ahead and click. And click one more time. So the hope at the end of the day is that after we scan and analyze, we come up with a response that eliminates that gap and brings us closer to those two things of our vision and mission. Go ahead on the next slide. So one thing that the chief alluded to, that over the last year or two in professional circles, whether that's the statewide Chiefs of Police Conference or the national conference for Chiefs of Police, we've been introduced to a technology. And I would say that what we have identified as a technological gap. Go ahead and click. And go ahead and click one more time for me. That if we resolve or bridge this technological gap, we will see noticeable, measurable impacts on 4 different things. And I'm going to talk about these at the very end. And they are deterrence, solvability, justice, and quality of life. 4 things that are very important to us all. I have a car up here, and if you want to click one more time, I've heard it reported that upwards of 70% of all crime has an associated vehicle. Now, the vehicle may have not been used in the commission of a crime, but it might have been the way that they got to the location, they committed the crime, and then they leave in that vehicle. In fact, we had that happen recently to a bank on Bridge Street, where the offender comes in a vehicle, commits the bank robbery. Thankfully, it doesn't happen often, and then he left, landing in Illinois later on. If you want to click one more time. Here you see a list of crimes that we do investigate. You can imagine that missing endangered children and adults usually has a vehicle involved in it. You might be exposed to the Wisconsin Crime Alert Network from time to time where, for example, a silver alert will be put out for an individual with Alzheimer's dementia that gets into a vehicle and their whereabouts are unknown. Flock safety, which is an automatic license plate reader technology. For those communities that have it, you'll most likely be notified if that person enters your community. Hit and run. Maybe you pull into a grocery store, you go inside, you come out to find that your vehicle was backed into. Without much to go on, if you didn't witness it, nobody else witnessed it, all you have is damage to your vehicle, there may not be much to go on. Stolen vehicles obviously involve a vehicle. Retail theft, whether it's a grocery store, convenience store, big box store, people come and go most often in a vehicle. Drug human trafficking. Our homicides or attempted homicides, the ones that have happened recently, the offender has come and left in a vehicle. If you could click one more time. Now, 60 to 70, upwards of 80% of all property crime goes unsolved. That's a pretty startling statistic, like theft of mail or burglary to a residence. Most go unsolved. And if you look at the fact that 70+% involve a vehicle, so often we get a crime that's committed and we have a description of a vehicle, we don't have a license plate. But what if there was technology that exists where if we had a description of a vehicle, we could put in those descriptions into a program and maybe come away with some leads? Prior to that technology, that case would be a dead end. But thankfully to Flock Safety and their technology, we're able to turn those dead end cases into cases that are cleared by arrest. Go ahead and click one more time. So in stops comes Flock Safety that will hopefully help bridge this gap. And I have a 3-minute video. And in this video, it's from a town of about 30,000 in South Carolina. And this police agency has adopted Flock Safety. And so you're going to be exposed to what this technology looks like, how it's implemented, the impacts that it's had on that community, and the potential impacts that Flock Safety could bring to Wausau as well. So go ahead and click. It should play right away. So, see if we have sound. Yep.
Anderson is a very diverse community as far as, you know, our racial makeup, the financial makeup. You can travel to all different kind of communities, no matter which way you go. It's a great community, great schools. Clemson University's close, Anderson University's here. It's a great place to live and raise your children.
Technology has changed from the time that I've started working up until now. We always gotta, you know, try to keep up with today's technology. If we want to try to catch the bad guy, we had a homicide where a young lady got killed, and the people that did it was from another county. Well, during our investigation, we spoke to the detectives in the other county, and they blocked the car once we gave them a description of the car. Well, then lo and behold, our suspects lived in that county, and where they had a camera set up, it was the neighborhood that they lived in. And so it kind of helped us out. Not only did we have a description of the car from witnesses, but now we got an actual picture of the car. And that makes all the difference.
You know, patrol just can't be everywhere. With the minimal amount of cost it was for the flock camera system, we had somebody out here 24/7. And it helped our police officers that were on patrol be able to respond faster to alerts of stolen vehicles, stolen cars, missing persons, endangered persons. Also helps us further investigation skills.
So there's several cases where we wouldn't have been able to do anything without flock. So it's there. You know, I might be in the bed asleep, but it's still out here taking pictures. A large-scale drug case, all we had was a description of the car. And we had an investigator that saw the car and specifically noted that the paint on the roof was faded. We didn't have a tag number, we didn't have anything like that, but we knew the kind of car it was. With flock, because it does such a good job, and we have such a large network of cameras, it brought up a lot of results. But we were able to go through and change some filters with it, and it narrowed it down to just a couple cars, and after running the tags on those, we had it. 5, 6, 7 years ago, however long ago, if we didn't have that kind of technology, it would go nowhere. It would have been a dead end right there.
You know, we're partnering with our Anderson University, Med Health, the school system, our apartment complexes, you know, so we want more cameras within the city of Anderson. Personnel, by far, is our greatest product, and the people that work here. If we don't have great people, then we're not going to have a great police department. But technology has furthered us more than anything here at Anderson PD.
All right, go ahead and advance that slide. So who is Flock Safety? Flock Safety is a U.S.-based company born in Atlanta, Georgia. In 2017, it was founded, and the co-founder of Flock Safety experienced some property crime in his neighborhood. And it was a dead end. There wasn't much to go on, but it created an opportunity for him. He thought to himself, we have a pretty narrow time frame of when this property crime occurred. I wonder if, like a gas station or another store that might have surveillance, if we had cameras on the right-of-way that captured not everything about a vehicle, but maybe the back of a vehicle and a license plate, maybe we could provide that information to police officers, and they might be able to take a dead-end case and follow up on additional leads and hopefully find the person accountable for these property crimes. And so in 2017, Flock Safety was born with the vision to eliminate crime while respecting individual rights. Go ahead and advance that slide. So how do they do it? They do it by deploying force multiplying technology that sees like a detective to make actionable evidence available. Imagine if we had the resources to add 20 more detectives to the Wausau Police Department. Actually more than that, because they'd be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, watching, observing, trying to take note of things that may not be quite right in our neighborhoods and in our city. How does Flock Safety do it? Well, they don't do it by hiring additional staff, which would be very, very expensive. They do it by, go ahead and click, by installing stationary automatic license plate readers. Now, LPR is not new to the city of Wausau. We've had it in our parking control vehicles now for a handful of years, but it's used in a very narrow sense in enforcing parking ordinances in our downtown. The technology has expanded, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. How it works is that when a vehicle drives by one of these Flock cameras, the camera captures the back of that vehicle. And usually what it does is it captures at least 2 lanes of omnidirectional traffic. And these cameras are typically put at entrance, exit points to a community, and also usually at major intersections. So here in the city, I'll have a map here in a second that shows you where some of those cameras could be placed. Go ahead and click. So here you'll see an example of what that Flock camera will pick up. Obviously, we're looking for plates, temp tags, state detection, but there is more. There's a fingerprint behind it. All of us are unique. Every vehicle is unique. Now, this is not facial recognition software, but it's kind of like that, but just for a vehicle where, and I already alluded to this, it also captures things like the type of the vehicle, the make, the model, color of the vehicle. It'll also pick up on things like a roof rack or stickers on a back window or a trailer. And like I said, so many of our cases have a vehicle involved. We may not have a license plate, but we have a description. So imagine if we are able to put that into this software, we'll be able to go from a description to a license plate. And what does that license plate tell us? Well, it tells us who the registered owner is, where they live. And usually, unless the vehicle is stolen, if it's not the registered owner driving the vehicle, it's somebody the registered owner knows. Go ahead on to the next slide. So this is what an officer would see, whether on their MDT in the squad or in the office on their computer, even on a smart device. They would be able to gain access and run a variety of filters that will hopefully bring a resolution, a positive resolution to a case. You want to go on to the next slide, which is talking about infrastructure. So what is needed? Thankfully, Flock Safety runs with something like a cell phone, so it has LTE connectivity. It can run off of solar power, which is what most agencies in the state here are using, but it can also be hardwired into our existing infrastructure. The nice thing is these can be put anywhere, and it just depends upon where we would want, depending upon if we'd use solar or existing infrastructure. Go ahead and advance. So here's an example of where some of our cameras could be placed. I estimate we would need between 15 and 20 cameras to be able to cover the entire city of Wausau. So you have the 29, the 51 corridor on the east side. You have Evergreen, East Wausau Avenue, Franklin, Town Line, Lakeview, and Grand. And we would also probably put some at our bridges that come and go over the east and west side of the city. Go ahead and advance that slide. Now, a big complaint might be, maybe in your mind, maybe in the eyes of your constituents, might be surrounded around privacy. You're telling me that every time I come into the city or leave the city, it's likely that my license plate is going to be recorded? That is true. But part of Flock Safety, they are committed to privacy. So I just want to highlight 5 things on this issue. Number 1, all of their storage, footage, and metadata is encrypted. Number 2, they build these devices to capture objective evidence, all right? It's not from the front of the vehicle, it's from behind. It's capturing license plates, which already happens for you. For example, if you go to a Quick Trip and you get your vehicle filled up, those cameras will zoom in on your license plate so that if there is a gas skip where you don't pay for your gas, they call us and we're able to follow up with that license plate. If you go through the state of Illinois and you go through a toll booth, that's going to capture your license plate as well. It also permanently and automatically deletes footage after 30 days. So unless your vehicle is stolen, wanted for some reason, or you committed a crime where an officer is specifically looking for your vehicle, they're not going to know that your license plate was captured by a Flock camera. After 30 days, it's written over and it's purged out of the system. Flock Safety gives us 100% ownership of those images, and they commit to never sell or share that information. Lastly, when an officer searches that information of Flock Safety, they need to have a good reason to do it, and that requires a case number or justification to be able to conduct that search. Go ahead and advance slide, please. So about the cost. In year 1, go ahead and click. It's $350 per camera for installation, and then a $2,500 per camera cost, totaling about $57,000 for year 1 to get us to 20 cameras. The ongoing expense is going to be the $7,000 less, so about $50,000 in total per year. Now you compare that to the cost of adding 20-plus detectives to the road, and while this is expensive, it certainly pales in comparison, and so you see why this is a force multiplier. Go ahead and advance the slide, please. So how is Flock being used here in the state of Wisconsin? You'll see that at least 26 agencies, it's growing, now have Flock in their communities. Communities like Milwaukee PD, Green Bay, Appleton, Dane County Sheriff's Office. You'll also see the Marathon County Sheriff's Office is on this list as well. They're in the process of having these installed at entrances to the county. You'll also see that under agencies with an MOU, we're listed there. Although we don't have cameras, we do have an MOU signed with Flock Safety that grants us access to other law enforcement agencies in the state that grant us access to allow us to query a license plate in their system. For example, if we have a crime committed here, but we believe the actor is in Appleton, for example, as long as Appleton PD has given us access to their cameras, I'd be able to put that license plate in there to see if that offender is there. What you see on the other side of this screen is if you were to do a Google search of Flock Safety here in the state of Wisconsin, you'd see things from Grafton, Port Washington, Mequon, and others talking about the successes. And every meeting that the chief and deputy chief go to where flock is being talked about or presented, they hear the praises. And this is stuff that is seen almost right away, the success stories of cars being recovered, retail theft suspects being captured. You'll see a post made on Facebook here from Port Washington where there was a silver alert for an 80-year-old man. And thanks to flock safety, they were able to recover that individual safely within just a couple hours. Go ahead and advance the slide. So at the beginning, I said I was going to come back to a couple things, in that if we can eliminate this gap with flock safety, it'll have a measurable impact on deterrence, solvability, justice, quality of life, and bring us closer to excellence. Deterrence, what is that? We've talked about, and you're likely familiar with, crime prevention through environmental design. That's what flock safety is about. It's like installing lights on a street. An offender is less likely to break into a car in the light as opposed to a street without lights. Or you might encourage a bar owner to get surveillance in their bar. That's going to dissuade people from acting out in that particular bar because they know they're on camera. A criminal will be less apt to commit crime in the city of Wausau if they know that their vehicle is going to be captured by a camera. Solvability. I've explained that many crimes go unsolved. We might have a description of a car, but without technology like this, it's going to be a dead-end case. Justice. If we can improve solvability, we're going to make more arrests, and those individuals are hopefully going to be held accountable for the crimes that they commit. And sometimes we have delays in investigations. So even absent flock, we're able to solve that case, but had we had flock, we would have been able to solve it quicker. And sometimes justice delayed is an injustice. Lastly, if we solve some of this deterrence, solvability, and justice, if we make improvements there, we're going to enhance quality of life for our residents, which is going to lead to excellence. So I don't know if the chief or deputy chief have any other comments on this. If not, if you have any questions or comments, I'd be happy. Yes, Ed.
Ed, go ahead.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a part-time job and I drive around the city as a delivery person, which is kind of nice, but there are a large number, and the number seems to be growing, of pickup trucks particularly, but other cars where they're altering their license plate number by covering it up either with tape, dirt, or a number of other things. So how do you resolve that on, if you're using this technology, how do we address that? And then second part of the question is, have you guys had a discussion with the city attorney, and what's the city attorney's view on the potential question of privacy so that we can address that to the taxpayers if they start to ask if this gets approved? Thank you.
Yeah, I have not had any conversations with the city attorney on this subject. I think it is important for the community to know about this and to be able to speak into this issue before it is adopted, which is partly why we're bringing this in this forum here. To the first half of your question, without flock safety, we're probably not even going to have a picture of that vehicle that you might see with a plate that is uncovered. So at least with a picture, we are able to then possibly take that picture and put it up on our Facebook page. And I'm telling you, you put that out to a city of 40,000 people, and somebody is probably going to provide us with a tip of, oh, I know who drives that vehicle, or I know the vehicle, or I know the residents that vehicle is associated with. So there is certainly potential for additional leads based upon, the fact that we have a picture of that vehicle now.
And, I guess, so this system, assuming that we would approve it, is it installed and maintained by our IT team, or does Flock install it for you?
It's installed by them, completely independent from IT. Obviously, IT would be involved if we're tapping into existing infrastructure, but it is maintained, all the maintenance. If something is damaged, they send their team to replace and fix those issues.
And it's basically like, it's hosted on their servers, so you're tapping into their system. It's not being integrated into our systems where the rollout would take a extended period of time.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else have questions? Michael?
Yeah. So I guess the question I have is this doesn't sound like it's a real-time system. So really, anytime you're accessing the database is after the fact. So an investigation has already started, and you're trying to, you're coming up with leads and things like that. It's not the kind of thing where you're say, looking for a suspect and if something trips the camera, you get an alert or something like that?
It's actually both. So it interfaces with the National Crime Information Center, so something we call NCIC. So if a vehicle is entered in as wanted or stolen, whether it's that silver alert, so that individual that might be in danger, or it's somebody with a significant warrant, or it's a stolen vehicle, that would create an automatic alert. So as soon as it goes past one of those cameras, dispatch would have that program open up in the dispatch center, and it would create an alert. It would also possibly create an alert in the officer's squad. And then they would respond to that particular area and try to apprehend the vehicle or further the investigation. Now, as you point out, much of what I talked about was, what can be done without those immediate notices, but it does both.
Okay, and this is basically looking at, looking at vehicles coming into the town, but you said it also scans 2 lanes of traffic, so are you able to see people leaving town then, I guess, or?
Yeah, so let's take Grand and Lakeview, for example. What you would have is you'd have some that are pointing north, some that are pointing south. So you'd get 2 lanes of traffic coming into the city, 2 lanes of traffic exiting the city, so you'd know who is coming and who is going. So if somebody commits a crime in town and leaves right away, we would be able to see a picture of that, the back of that vehicle as they leave or they enter.
Okay, so there's 2 cameras, one that's facing north and one that's facing south then?
Correct.
So it's not like the camera's doing double duty?
No, it's omnidirectional. Otherwise, it'd be capturing the front of the vehicle, which, adds to that privacy issue.
Okay, so it's always the back of the vehicle?
That is correct.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions? Okay. I don't, so thank you for that presentation.
Thank you, Lisa.
And we have 2 more requests, as the chief said, from the police department. Sit-stand desks. A while back in finance, we had received an ARPA funding request for sit-stand desks. And, the finance committee had ranked and scored it, but they felt that at the time, looking for a wider public impact for ARPA dollars, they didn't feel like it was a fit. I mean, from an ergonomic standpoint, it's a good project, but it wasn't a priority for ARPA funding. And so we had asked them to include this in the CIP because it's really equipment. So, welcome.
Good morning. I think from a sit-stand standpoint, as times have changed and people work with physical therapists and deal with issues, one of the things that's a healthier choice for staff is sit-stand. And when the first couple people at the police department said, I want a sit-stand desk, and we had the ability to provide those, I thought I'd keep an eye on this because there's no way they're going to choose to stand all day. And to my surprise, everyone with a sit-stand desk spends the majority of their day standing, and they see positive results of that. So one of the challenges for us is to try and meet the needs of our staff, and we think the opportunity to have a sit-stand desk helps us do that. It doesn't help us catch criminals, which is why you got a lot of information about flock and less about sit-stand.
Is it a retrofit for an existing desk, or is it a whole new desk?
There's a couple different ways to do that. One is to put a sit-stand attachment on top of the desk.
Right.
The ideal way to do that is we've worked with a local company here through the Samuels Group. I think it's Environments, and they motorize our desks. You push a button, the whole desk comes up. And that's the ideal way because all your materials come up and it doesn't. This is out of my league, but the physical therapist says, Matt, that's the way to do it so that people aren't looking down at their desk for all their materials and then constantly moving and arching their neck. So we have both of those at the police department right now. I think the preference for everyone would be where their entire workstation rises and they get to work on it from that standpoint.
Yep. Okay. Does anyone have questions on that equipment at all? We'll certainly rank and score that as well. And then the last one is the shooting range training facility.
Yeah, this has really morphed over the many years. We've brought this to CIP. And for those that aren't aware, we had a need for 2 things. One was a storage facility, which was funded through CIP. We put that on city property out in the industrial park. So there's about 3.5, 4 acres out there. That property was allocated to the police department by the city, and we built our evidence storage facility, which is meeting all of our needs and will for many years to come. The other challenge we have is we currently have an outdoor shooting range, which is on the north end of town, but outside the city. It's property that probably when my parents were little kids, was allocated and given at a no-cost lease to the city by 3M. So it's out by their mine. In working with 3M, they've been very generous. They do maintenance on this facility for us. It meets our needs right now. But the likelihood is that is not a forever solution for the police department to have a place to shoot. So the way to have a forever solution is to have that in the city. And this property, we've had it looked at by our engineering here, has the ability to build that range. When looking at what is a solution for a police department, especially in a city, to have a shooting range, I thought this outdoor solution was the ideal, but as I look at what other communities are doing and why they're doing it, especially in metropolitan areas, they're really moving toward an indoor range, which I have no idea what one costs, but I know it costs a lot more than piles of sand that we shoot into. So in looking at the other agencies and then also talking to our technical college who says, why don't you guys come up to the north end of Merrill in Lincoln County and use the tech's facility? We're like, it's too far. And they asked our fire department, why don't you send your trucks and your staff? And they're like, we can't send our fire trucks and ambulances and all our apparatus to outside the county. We need it available locally here to be able to respond, even if we are training. So I have included Chief Bartek and his staff to go out and look at the property. They see the potential for the training needs that they have, which help them change their class of fire department that they are, which I'm no expert in, but my understanding is they're a 2 and want to be a 1. So that opportunity to train in an area that has the facilities necessary, and I think it's a burn house and some other kind of tower and really cool stuff fire department people get to do. There's room for that. So instead of just having it be a police department, a police training facility, to have it be a public safety training facility. But our eyes are bigger than our stomach, and the amount of money that it would cost to build that, I think, is outside what you'd be comfortable with us asking for. But the tech stepped up and said, we see a need there, and we think this is a great way for us to partner. So the preliminary conversations about whether it's worth looking at federal grant dollars that they have access to, where we can provide the property and they can provide the money for the infrastructure to create an indoor range and build the training facility for fire departments that then service not only the city of Wausau, but also the surrounding communities to Wausau. That might be a great partnership that really serves the city well for long past my career to be able to do that. So what you see in front of you is a guesstimate on how much money it would cost to start the preliminary clearing of the property. DPW, we expect to be involved in that. It's been several years, but they're like, depending on, if you're open to whatever month we can have the availability to get out there, we'll do some of that work.
Okay.
But we need to get it cleared, and ultimately, we need engineers to come in and say, here's what it's going to take on this property to do anything. Here's how many loads of fill, or here's how many loads of fill need to get removed, all of which is outside my scope of any type of expertise to be able to figure that out. So really, this year's ask is for funding so we can try and get answers to what would it really take to improve that property and make it useful for us.
Okay. And that was a $75,000 ask for this year. At least that would allow for some facility planning. Have you surveyed or looked at any indoor range facilities? I believe the State Patrol has one here. I mean, theirs is in use all the time for their troop training, but I believe they have one.
Right, there's a private indoor facility here in Marathon County, Zingers and Flingers. I've looked at what it takes to have their facility. The State Patrol has a couple lanes in their basement. I don't know that they're using it right now. The big challenge with indoor ranges is ventilation.
Yep.
So if you shoot ammunition that you can afford, it's lead. If you shoot non-toxic ammunition, because you don't have the venting, the price per round goes up times 5 or times 6 and makes it unaffordable. So North Central Technical College has an indoor range. And what I see in other like-size agencies to ours, as we meet with them in conferences and talk about the challenges of policing in communities our size, they're all moving to indoor ranges. Because it creates long-term, weather's less of an issue, and the indoor ranges are designed that you can make more challenging courses with moving targets and opportunities for staff. And we think the better training we can give, the better our officers will be prepared.
Do we have even a guess on development costs in terms of, I mean, obviously multi-million, but, do we know, is it 5, 10, 15? I mean,
I would feel very comfortable saying it's to do the entirety of the project, including the public safety component with the fire department.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in $2, $3, $4, $5 million, but I learned long ago when standing in front of you, I don't want to give you a solid price because I
well,
don't know
I
what I'm
think just so
talking
we can
about.
kind of get our eye on the prize for, obviously if it's a multi-stage ranking and it's a phased plan, those numbers aren't shocking unless you need them like right now. So
Right.
I think it helps us understand that, knowing that if we fund the research for this, that in future asks, what they could add up to. So,
Yeah, my thought on that was about a third of that money would be spent contracting to get what has to happen to this property and start to get the beginning engineering done. And about 2/3 of $50,000 of that property would be to start clearing the property and getting the stumps out and do property improvement there. So we can really get a good picture of what we're working with. Where right now it's about 10% 6-foot tall grass and the rest of it is all wooded with, it's going to take some logging and it's going to take bulldozing and removing the stumps. But it's easier to start with a blank slate than looking at it from that standpoint.
well, and I like the idea of a multifaceted training facility that police and fire can both use, especially since we are supporting a tactical EMS team that needs to be training, with law enforcement routinely, whether it be in existing established buildings or in something like this. So I certainly can see the need for that. Does anyone have any questions about the concept or about this particular ask? Okay, I don't either,
Thank you.
but we certainly will rank it. So, okay, so that is the end of the police department requests. We have built into our schedule the possibility for a second break. Does anyone need a second break? If not, we're good. We can move right over to CCITC and we're right back on schedule.
You guys have fruit here, should I bring it over?
Do.
Need all that energy.
That's right. When we got to knock these all out in one day, we got to have that energy, so.
Yeah.
Usually it's a multi-day process, so we're efficient though. We're moving right along.
That's good.
Okay. Looks like only 3 requests this year for IT.
We have a couple of recurring ones
Okay,
that don't show up in here. But I can, if you want, I can start with those and
Sure.
just kind of give you guys a quick
Yep,
picture
go
of that.
ahead.
So we do replace all of the PCs. We shoot for about a 4.5-year replacement. So we typically ask for around $80,000 or $90,000 a year for, I think that this year, I think it was in that kind of ballpark. I don't remember exactly the number. The reason you're not getting that is over the last couple of years, and Lisa's been involved with me for a few years now, Mary Ann has figured out a way to fund that by kind of distributing it across other accounts so that all the departments are pulling money in for that. So PC replacement is not in front of the capital request. We pulled that out, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
yep. Internal Equipment Replacement Fund, so.
Yeah. We also replace cameras that are broken, Wi-Fi hotspots, access point switches and servers. And so there's she has another fund for that. She's usually around $40,000 or $50,000 in the last few years. To replace
telephones and things,
stuff.
right?
Yep, phone replacement. That one's actually out of a separate account. She's got a separate account for that. We have a fair amount of cameras in the fixed cameras. This building has a number of cameras, not this one, but like in the all the doorways are covered. The ramps have quite a few cameras in them, and many of them are pretty old. So we actually have been replacing a lot of cameras in the ramps. There's about 25 cameras in each of the 3 ramps, approximately.
Okay.
And then we have cameras at the police and fire station. And so we do need to fund those, replacements of those. Lately, what we've been fighting with is video storage, but that's another discussion for another day. That's been challenging for us as well. So those are some recurring accounts that we've, over the last couple of years, we've kind of pulled out of the CIP process. So all you have is these 3 in front of you. Which way are they in your packet?
The first one we have is the council chamber video and room upgrades.
Okay, this one has been in front of you for a couple of years. It's getting more and more pressing. as a need because it keeps falling apart.
We had a great visual today trying to get PowerPoint going, so.
That projector, actually, I think I heard last week that projector wouldn't start
Correct.
for PowerPoint, for the council meeting.
Yep.
So I've been here 15 years. This equipment was put in a couple years before I was here. I remember very well that one of the first few weeks I was here, I was in this room with Andy Zinda, which is one of our guys that have been with us for 25 plus years. He took me in here, showed me the equipment. It's actually right behind the U.S. flag is a rack of equipment. And I remember him very clearly telling me, yeah, this stuff is old, it's at end of life, and we don't have any documentation on it. And the guy that installed it is no longer around. And that
Still
was
in there?
15 years ago. If you look back there, you'll see a DVD player, a VHS player, some pretty old school stuff. But it continues to work.
Retro.
It's not getting carried around much. So we've made, lately it's been more pressing to replace this because because of when COVID hit, we started to have to do WebEx. So we had to kind of retrofit this room to do that. That's why we have cabling. We have duct tape on the floor right now. And we've been able to make it work. It's not elegant. If COVID hits back up and many of you guys go back and work, the council members are in that mixed environment or fully at home, what happens is when we have an engineer available like we do today back there, when there's someone on WebEx that wants to talk, one of the council members asks a question, but they're at WebEx, they're over WebEx. What happens is we have 2 clerk PCs up there. One of them is running the the voting side stuff, which I'll talk about in a minute, and then the other one is hosting the WebEx stuff. It's pretty old school. We actually present that monitor up on the monitor behind them, behind that person, and then that camera gets zoomed in on it, and we pick up the audio as best we can by having a microphone towards the speaker. It's pretty clunky. That projector is also very old and needs to be replaced. What you have in front of you is a ballpark price. I actually have met twice in the last 2 weeks with an engineering company that does this kind of work. They had done the assembly room at the courthouse. It's a company called SKC. Now they just got bought by the other big company in the U.S. in Wisconsin called AVI. Been meeting with them. I don't have a final price, so this is kind of a ballpark price.
Okay.
And what they would do is they'll replace all the equipment in the back there. They'll put in, they'll integrate a video controller into the wiring rack. So WebEx will come in like it does at the courthouse. It comes in through the video system. So there's a touchpad up there. That one gets replaced. There's a little touchpad up there right now. It gets replaced with about an 8-inch one. I'm sorry, a 10-inch one. And then you start the video call on there. And what that allows it to do is when we're presenting the live feed to the community, from the engineers in the back there, they have that as a regular video feed from them, so they can elegantly switch between the camera in the room, maybe a PowerPoint presentation that might be happening up on the screen, and then who's talking in WebEx. And that's what they do today when they have that. Really, that's kind of what they're doing today. They're just doing it really clunky. Those guys are making those decisions. So if you were at home watching it in live, that's a situation where someone introduces a topic, they zoom in on that person, they start presenting a PowerPoint presentation, they zoom on your media switches, just like when you're watching the news, it switches to that video feed, and then someone else talks and they switch to them. Well, of course, we have 2 different video platforms. So then in the last few months, we've replaced the voting system in this room with open meeting. The new system is, we've integrated it as best we can, but what it's doing is right next to Ms. Rasmussen, that PC right there is running open meeting, and it needs to present 2 feeds to the room and 1 to the clerk. The clerk gets, they have a clerk view, and then there's an app that shows the voting, and you guys have seen this at the last couple of council meetings. You see the voting one, and then the discussion one would typically be shown as well. So I went over that with the engineering company. What we would do if we get the funding for this is we'll get rid of this projector. We will get rid of that screen back there. We'll cut that whole cabinet out and put 2 TVs back there, probably about 75 inches next to each other. We'd hang 2 TVs in here, one here and one there, hanging down. Those will be a little bit smaller because you have to walk underneath them, of course. So there'll probably be 55-inch ones there. They'll need to replace the microphones that are on there. The new microphones, they basically just look like that as well, and they have the mute, and then there's a little speaker built into them so that when you're talking, he's hearing it on that little speaker, and when you're talking, you're not hearing yourself on it, so there's not a feedback loop.
Oh, sure.
So they account for all of that stuff. The other thing is that cabinetry that you guys are sitting behind is falling apart. And so a bunch of it is actually held on with tape right now. The little laminate stuff needs to be replaced. So I put in $8,000 for construction work. We would cut that cabinet back there. There's actually a whole bunch of that laminate on the back wall that's not being used. So we'd steal that to clean that up. And then those two monitors that are blocking the clerk, we would actually cut that cabinet right next to where the mayor sits or whoever's running the meeting sits. And we drop those two monitors down into there so that they're pretty close to flush with the top of that. And it'd clean that up as well. They would also replace the buttons that we're no longer using in front of you that says yes, no, and abstain. They would just faceplate over those because those are no longer used. You're already voting on the digital devices.
Okay.
So that's where that's at. Any
Excellent.
Questions?
I have none. Do you, Mike? Go ahead.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, I guess, when I first saw this, I remember pre-COVID when we started talking about the upgrades to this room, and it was about $30,000, and to see it balloon up to 168 was a little, taking me aback a little bit, but now when you described everything that's going to happen to this room, I can see how that all starts to make sense.
Yeah, I don't remember it ever being 30. I remember submitting it last year, 2 years ago, I think for 90 or so.
Yeah, it very could have been, I remember.
It's gotten more complicated in the last few years.
I think every time it's come up here, it's increased in price.
Yeah.
But it's also increased in complexity.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
has.
this might be the fourth.
Open meeting.
This might be the fourth time.
It's been a couple times.
Yeah. It's been quite a
It
while.
has been going up, but this is the best guess I have right now.
Yeah.
The most recent estimate I have from them is about a year and a half old, so that's why I met with them twice lately. They physically were actually here taking measurements and stuff
Okay.
2 weeks ago. I think the 168 that I put in there is probably pretty close to accurate, probably within 10 or 15,000.
Yeah, I know if we're gonna seal up all of these buttons and stuff, we need more USB ports back here too for everybody's.
We could do that when we have
device.
that kind of torn apart. I actually mentioned that to him. I'm like, we really should have chargers up where people can use them as well.
Yeah, because now that we got, everybody's got a PC and we got the phone and the pad, and we need a lot more.
Yeah,
we
I
need
think
a
what
lot
we'd
more-
probably do is we probably would have USB jacks, so you can power them like between every two
Yep.
chairs.
Yep.
Yeah.
A set of two of them for every two chairs.
Everybody needs their own set.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
okay.
for sure.
So we'd keep this TV. We put this a few years ago. We're also planning to keep the cameras. Those are fairly new.
Yep.
And then the big piece of gear that he's using in the back is super expensive. It's called a TriCaster. That's 10 or 11,000 a piece. We just bought that a few years ago.
So we'll keep that as well.
We're going to
Okay.
keep the TriCaster, these 4 cameras. Been a lengthy discussion yesterday. I think he's actually recommending that we put 2 other cameras in here for when we use the room without an engineer there. I won't get into the detail on that, but he assures me that that's the best solution,
Okay.
the engineer. So
All right. So we'll.
one of these days, that stuff's just going to die, and then you're going to be like, okay, we have to do it now. So I'd love to see you guys get that funded so we can get it done
Okay.
before it dies.
And
One
as
of the
far
things
as-
to keep in mind is stuff is taking forever to come in.
I was going to ask you about implementation.
Absolutely,
So,
it's awful. It's
So
actually
the-
gotten worse in the last few months than it did. Everybody knows that, when COVID hit, we had all these problems with getting chips and stuff from Asia, where most of the chip manufacturer is done. It's actually gotten worse lately. We're looking at 6 to 8 months for laptops, video gear that I just ordered in January. I'm not getting until September. So
we could be towards the end of '23, even if we fund it, right? I mean, as
Yeah.
far as the.
yeah, I
like-
probably would order it, in December or January, and it'd still probably be 7 or 8 months before you get it.
Okay. And do
If
they
you have a big failure in there, we're going to be without it for quite a while.
Well, that's just it. And, I think but that'll give us some time to develop a operation plan for, how we will function while this is all under construction. So,
Now, and you and I had a discussion about this a few months ago. I did also think about submitting this an ARPA fund request, but my last conversation with you was, you were, the consensus on ARPA funds was to look for things that serve the community better than this type of
that's what the
request.
finance committee really seems to want.
So I
is-
didn't resubmit it to ARPA, but if you
Yeah.
want me, if you tell me today to do that, I can do that.
Now, let's rank it and see what we have for fund sources first before we take that step, because
Fair enough.
they've been trying to kind of put a pin in and hold equipment requests and look for public-facing things that can really benefit the public more so than us internally.
I totally understand.
So-
But, so that would be, I think, the options that you guys would have in front of you.
Okay? All right. Next,
What do you
we
have next?
The city council device refresh.
Yeah, this is really simple and easy, and then actually it's only $10,000, so it actually doesn't really fit in there, but I don't have any other way to fund this, so I wanted you guys to think about it. You could also potentially request, have Mary Ann build it in an operating budget, addition on an account, but basically the iPads that we have for city council, there's 11 plus the mayor has one. I think the mayor has one, I'm not positive.
She does.
They're all at end of life, so they will need to be replaced in the next cycle.
Given the fact that we have.
And I don't know if I had to replace them with iPads. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Well,
but-
we've been, and this is the second set of iPads for the council since we went with them,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we've had
Yeah,
them
typically,
replaced.
they need to, Apple makes us replace them about every 3 or 4 years.
Right, well, they'll quit supporting them. So, but anyway, separate from that, I think that whether we would eventually going forward build this into the equipment replacement fund, because it's equipment that needs to be replaced cyclically, I mean, we
Yep.
know that, or whether we would enhance the line item in the budget for council expenses. The council has its own budget that it uses for some limited travel, and it uses for things like the retreat and whatnot, training, brings in speakers sometimes. So whether we would have some equipment funding built in that budget, or whether we would get these in the equipment replacement fund going forward, I'd like to see that be happening.
I'm curious.
I mean, there's no,
I don't-
it's
you
like
know me, I
ranking
don't- I don't care how
someone's
it gets
desktop
funded. I
now.
just want to see it funded.
Right, well, and we didn't have them years ago, so
Yeah.
now this is like replacing anybody's desktop. I
Yeah.
mean, it's equipment and,
And Wesley and I had a conversation about this. We may look at like Google, the Google Chromebooks, and we'll look at some other options before we actually buy something.
okay. Yep.
I think that's still out there as far as what we're.
But, I mean, if it's a required device, now we need it to vote, now we need it to participate, we need it to download the meeting packet. Now it's necessary equipment. So
Yeah.
I'd like to see it, an infusion made to one of those funds so that it just happens.
That would be great.
Okay.
That would be great.
Anybody
That's-
have
that one's pretty
questions
easy,
on-
right?
Right, anybody have questions on that at all? If not, then the last one is security incident event monitoring subscription.
Yeah, this is expensive. I don't know if you had a chance to read this one, but.
It is.
So this is, and this is a little, there's some, we need to have a conversation about, how this fits in and where it should fit into funding. But the bottom line is that we have a lot of data now that we're getting from devices that tell us what's going on in the device. And there's the best practice now is to put in technology called a SIM, which is a security incident and event managing tool. Typically, these will be cloud solutions, so they're not actually on site here. But we take all the data that we have that all the stuff that's happening on our devices all day long, and it's constantly being fed to a place where they're going through it and they're looking for all kinds of different situations that need to be dealt with. Today, most of our gear doesn't necessarily look, there's a little bit of looking for security issues, but most of it looks for failures. So like if a hard drive is full, or a server goes offline, or a network connection to maybe the police station goes offline, that all gets, my network staff get an email about that, and they might get a text message about it. The modern way to do that is you send it to these tools, and the company puts this together, and they build all these filters in there. And they can look, they'll tell us about a problem that we need to deal with. But if it's a security risk, like all of a sudden there's all kinds of traffic going to Ukraine at 2 o'clock in the morning, or Russia, I'll pick on Russia since it's easy to pick on them these days. They can look for that, and they can say, hey, I've got this PC that is showing abnormal traffic. This PC is usually sitting here it normally doesn't have hardly any traffic between 4:30 in the afternoon and 8 o'clock in the morning, and now it's done 10,000 packet requests out to an IP address that's registered to Russia. These tools can go look for that kind of abnormal behavior, and then they're connected to a company that's monitoring it 24/7, and that's called the SOC, and that's Security Operations Center. Though these companies that do this stuff, the one that we are looking at the most is Arctic Wolf. Their Security Operations Center they have a couple of them, but their main one is in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And what they would do when they see that is they would look at, okay, well, I can see this traffic coming in, this abnormal traffic. What are we scheduled to do for that with this particular customer? And we may set up ahead of time and say, shut that computer off, shut that switch port off, and then try to get a hold of us, and we'll send someone to go physically get the computer and put in and bring it in to be analyzed. And so they can stop that traffic at 2 o'clock in the morning and, in maybe 20 minutes. To try to do this ourselves, we can go buy these tools, but we'd have to man a security operations center by ourselves. That would be, you're talking about a loaded benefit. Those positions are probably with benefits $110,000, $120,000 person. To run a 24/7 operation like that, you'd need, 5 or 6 people, 8 people. I don't remember. I don't know the math on that. When you start to try to figure out how to do that yourself, it's just incredibly unaffordable. So Arctic Wolf has presented us a proposal. We've met with them a couple of times in the last 6 months. It's about $250,000 a year to do this. The city would be the city's portion of that, based on the number of devices that we have at the city, is 47,000. I think 47 and change. What number did I put in there? 47,231. The counties and North Centrals are each in the $90,000 range. And that comes up with that 250,000.
And does this really then also serve as either a screen for or an early warning for things like hacks and cyber or ransomware?
Ransomware attacks, yeah.
I mean, we don't
So-
want to be in a position where we are having to pay, millions to free up the systems that operate our utilities and things. So,
Right.
I mean, if this is an early warning for that, that can get us ahead of such a thing?
It's an early
Separate-
warning for that. It probably would, if they stop it, it would probably, we'd probably still have a lot of remediation to do, because it would have probably gotten some files encrypted. But it would, in most cases, they can stop it at, fairly quickly, and then you have to go remediate what they weren't able to stop.
Sure. Well, at least damage control, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions about this particular system? Michael?
Is this a new service that we're adding on, or is this something that, that CCIT is already doing, but you're offloading, or
It's
a combination of the two?
It's a new
or-
service, for sure. It's new technology that we don't have today.
Okay.
All we do today is we have a lot of equipment that sends us data, and so we collect it. But we have so much of it, we hardly do anything with it. We only do it when it causes a problem that we are then being reactive to. Like a hard drive fills up, and then a staff person in the morning says, I can't go do my work because I can't save a file out there. And then we go look and like, oh yeah, it filled up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And so then we'll go carve out new space somewhere else and try to resolve it. So we have a very reactive environment today. This is more, I wouldn't say it's necessarily proactive. It may not be the right term, but it's very fast reactive compared to what we do today, which is slow reactive. We wait until it's a big problem and then we go fix it. I also would add the federal government, of course, they've specifically said ARPA money should be used for cybersecurity. That's specifically listed in the ARPA money. And then the federal government is also setting aside a fair amount of money specific to this technology. So I've been asked a few weeks ago, I was asked to be on a task force for the state. The state chief information security officer invited myself, and he's got about 10 or 12 people on it. The state is expecting to get from the federal government probably, they haven't given us the number yet, but if you do the math, dividing it up by states and populations, we'll probably get $100 or $200 million from the federal government to do this specific stuff. But it is spread out over 4 years. And if you think about 72 counties and a couple hundred cities that need to do this, plus the state Department of Administration itself, it's not going to go that far. If our what I would call a small organization is talking about $250,000 a year, do the math across the whole country, take $150, $200 million, divide it out over 4 years, it doesn't go very far. So what we think is going to happen on that task force that I'm on is that we're going to put together the selection criteria for spreading out the grant money, probably in July and August, and we're expecting the feds to tell us how much Wisconsin's getting around August timeframe. And of course, I would bring that back to you guys and say, okay, City of Wausau, Marathon County is going to get this much of it as grant funding, and we bring that into account. What the state will probably do is negotiate a deal with someone like Arctic Wolf and say, anybody that wants to go buy this stuff, they can get it at this discounted price.
So buy it at the state rate, basically, or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The neat part about what the federal government did with this particular chunk of money, I think it's $2 billion, is they told states that that they're in charge of distributing it, but they can't use more than 20% of it for themselves. So 80% of it specifically has to be given to city government, county government, school districts, and tribes. So it's kind of cool.
That-
A lot
that
of times
is-
when the state
that's
gets
a
money,
plus.
they keep a lot of it, they give a little bit to the rest of us.
That's right.
This time, the federal government said, you can't spend more than 18% of it, and you can take 2% for administration of the grant money. So
Okay.
I am expecting to get some money from that, but
Smart.
probably not enough to cover it.
Okay. Well, and I mean, even if we did, then we could just readjust the list and see if we can either, get more work done in other
Yeah,
areas
and
of our
I think
CIP.
timing
or-
will be good. I mean, I think I'll probably know that by September or October.
Oh, sure. And we won't finalize till November anyway
Right.
on the budget part,
So as soon as I get more information on that, I'll come back. But
Perfect. Okay.
that task force meets like 4 times between now and August.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that item? If not, then I think we're good on the IT projects. Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
And then our last presentation comes from Parks, and we've got Parks Director Polly with us. She can walk us through her requests. Yep. Switch to the Parks section of the book.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Just get my computer open. Okay. Trying to go more paperless, so I'm not using my computer yet. All right, I will walk through my presentation with you. I'm just going by how they are in the packet. I think that this is the order that they were in. With priority would be the Oak Island restroom renovation. This is a new one that hasn't come forward to the CIP committee yet. It's been identified in our outdoor recreation plan as a need. This is one of our oldest facilities that we have as far as a park restroom goes, heavily used, and it's a block facility. We have retrofitted it just enough to barely meet the ADA, but it does with the building settling and just the age of it. It's got a very narrow doorway on both the men's and the women's side. It just squeaks by at the moment, but it's not the most accessible bathroom that we have. And then we are renovating the skate park as part of the ARPA dollars that we got, which I just got the RFPs out yesterday, so we should keep that moving along. But knowing that this park is so heavily used, and then with that enhanced amenity, we really need to start looking at these restrooms and figuring out what we can do to renovate them. I don't plan on moving them anywhere. There's no need to move them, but we need to probably put new doors. So the whole building may not need to be removed, but we do need to do a pretty big renovation of it with at least putting in new entrance doors, getting new ramps up to it. I think I included in your packet some pictures from our ADA audit that show that we have some lips in the entrances that we need to make sure we comply with, just the trail up to the bathroom, a curb cut put in there so you can get from the parking area into the bathroom. So that's what this request is to bring these bathrooms up to more code. Like I said, we've done things as much as we can to what's there with changing the bar heights. So a lot of the small items that are in the packet from that ADA audit have been done. The hand dryers and stuff like that has been done. But it would be very beneficial to update this restroom facility and modernize it. And we need to look at the structure of the building to determine if we could just renovate what is there and do a facade improvement, or if we want to use the infrastructure that's there underneath the ground and put a new restroom facility on top. What I quoted in the project is actually would be replacing this building with one of those prefab bathroom buildings that you can get from the restroom company and there's other companies. We use them quite frequently for our vault toilets and all of the other parks that we have. So that is that particular project. Do you want to go one by one through the projects, or?
Yeah, probably maybe in the order that we have them in the book. So the Oak Island restroom is the first one. Second one is Riverside Parks parking lot.
Yep. I didn't know if you wanted to ask questions on each one as we go.
We can take questions on each project. We've kind of been working that way. This one's kind of self-explanatory. Does anyone have questions on Oak Island restroom? If not, we'll keep on trucking.
Okay. So Riverside Park parking lot This is also a new one to the CIP committee. You'll see down the line, we have Sylvan Hill parking lot. That's been here numerous times. But it's similar to the rest of our park facilities. We have aging infrastructure. So we have some new facilities, and then we have the really older facilities. Riverside Park is probably our second most rented shelter besides Oak Island. One of the top three. I guess Sylvan Hill is also very rented, but Riverside Park is very heavily used there. We are redoing the playground there this year with the community development block grants funding that we got last year. We also have just done some renovations to the inside of this building, so it's making it more desirable that people use it. And even we have our city picnic there, and the parking lot is one that we haven't had the funds or the time to put in to redoing that parking lot. I think it would need, in talking with Public Works, so we conferred with Public Works on both this one and Sylvan Hill parking lot, so I guess I can cover both of those at one time, to do it in-house, to not have a contractor come in and do it and try to save some money by having our staff do the prep work of the parking lot and then Public Works do the paving when they have time and time allows. And they've done that for us before. Highways also helped us. So the quote in here that we have was from our Public Works Department and what they're getting for pavement costs. And it would be just putting a new layer on, similar to our roads need repair. Our parking lot has met that time frame.
Okay. Question on Riverside Park, because we just learned, I mean, well, you know more than anyone, that we just learned that we may need to do a substantial excavation at one end of the park, at least of topsoil, and then replacement thereof to mitigate some pollutants. That's the opposite end of the park from where the parking lot is, right? So this project is not impeded by that project? Or could they be
Right.
done together? I mean, I guess,
They could potentially be done together depending upon what the DNR comes back with, what our remediation requirement will be for that end of the park. The area that's in question that we'll have to do the soil remediation is just to the south of the parking lot. So far in all the studies we've done, we've never gone close to the parking lot for those testing. Now, part of the DNR's requirement will be to do some further test drilling along the perimeter of that to make sure that we're getting the whole area. So although I don't foresee us having to go into the parking lot for any of that remediation because we haven't been in that area, I guess I can't say for certainty at this point that once we test how far we need to remediate, it won't get to that point.
right,
But it
you
is
hate to put it
pretty
in
far.
brand new and then have to
Right.
pull it up, so.
Yep. We should have the information, according to the Public Works Director, in the presentation he gave on Monday to our Parks Committee. We hope to get the DNR's information back within the next month for knowing what our remediation plan is going to be. And then we'll have to put together that package.
Are we looking at any sample borings near the parking lot other than what you've already got taken?
We are not at this
Okay,
point, no.
okay. So then we would just score this to right away then, so. Okay. And Sylvan Hill you kind of covered as well. Does anyone have questions about either parking lot? I think Sylvan's parking lot's probably been on here 5 or 6 times, so.
Yeah,
You know,
it's to the point where it's pretty much
Not really a
gravel.
parking lot now, it's just gravel, so,
Yes, and that quote in there is also from Public Works as well.
okay. And then we have playground replacement year 1.
Yep. So our playground replacement, this is, we have 2 years left of the complete playground replacement schedule that we were on. And then we have pretty much replaced all of the playgrounds within the city within the last 5 years. So then we have about a 10-year gap, and then we'll start all over again. So where we do that. But these last 2 playgrounds that we need to do is Westview Terrace and River Highlands. So River Highlands would be the one for 2023. That's located on the far northeast corner of the city. And it's a very small playground. It's a neighborhood playground, so it's not one of those community playgrounds. This one, I have been trying to apply for the community development block grant funds for our playgrounds. This one does not qualify for that because it's not in a census tract.
Okay.
Westview Terrace doesn't either, from the mapping that I had received, but that one may be closer because it's closer to town, but I don't believe that one is
I
either.
don't think it is either.
Yeah, that's by Wausau West area. So these are our last 2 playgrounds to be completed, and we would do the same as we have in years past with making them ADA compliant. These 2 playgrounds are not slated to have the poured-in-place surfacing, with it at this point, but they would have maybe components of the port-in-place servicing similar to what Forest Park Playground has. If our budget allows, we've been able to sometimes get in on some sale prices during certain times of the year with some of these playground companies, and then we can put that port-in-place surfacing throughout the whole thing, making it fully inclusive. But either way, it will bring it up. It will be accessible, it will have new components, and it will be something that the neighborhood will gravitate to.
Sure. Okay. Anybody have questions on the playgrounds at all? Okay. Next, we have tennis court.
Tennis court, this is something that has also been on the CIP schedule over the years. This one is, we have not done a playground, or a tennis court in the last couple of years, just due to them not raising to the top of the list for the CIP, but they are starting, continuing to age. We did one, I think our last tennis court that we did was 3 years ago, and then this has been on it since then to continue our tennis courts. We are utilizing, the last one we did was 3M, and when we did 3M, we were able to put the top coat on, and we were able to line it for tennis and pickleball. We will look at these parks the same. Alexander Airport would probably have those same lines on it. I think there's a pretty good group over there. Oak Island is the only one on this for 3 years out that we probably wouldn't put pickleball on. That's pretty much our tennis facility. And then pickleball is throughout these other neighborhood tennis courts, as well as we have 9 courts now at Marathon Park. So, but Alexander Airport Park is the next one on our list to do. It is in pretty rough shape. We do need to do some crack filling, some new resurfacing, and some attention to the fencing there. We were going to put it in our small project list for this last year, but the cost came back over budget from what we had in our small project list, so it is something that we do need to come to CIP for. Memorial Park would be our next one, and then Oak Island is a larger project in 2027.
Okay. All right. Anyone have questions on tennis court? Go ahead, Michael.
Door tennis courts at the various parks, do they still have pretty good use? Do people seem to still be using them as an activity, or?
They do seem to be used. It really came back during COVID when people were getting outside. We saw much more increased use of our tennis courts. But if we do include the pickleball lines, then we've seen that increased usage there. So I wouldn't say that any of these we'd really want to take away, but it's not out of the question to keep looking at that, but they are continuing to be used.
But restriping them for pickleball gives them an extra level of utility, and that seems to be a more popular activity at this point in time.
Correct, yep.
Right. And the multi-use is definitely a plus. Okay. Anyone else have questions on tennis court? If not, Memorial Park seawall, this has also been with us for a while.
Yes, so this is one, I put it as our lowest priority because I am currently looking into some further grants that we might be able to apply for this. There is some shoreline restoration grants that we may be able to get some funding. I just didn't have a particular grant that we were able to qualify for yet as these were due, but this is something that I will continue to look for. The wall that is there, and I have pictures of it in your packet, is still in place. It is being undermined, and it has been undermined for years. It has not gotten substantially worse, but as water levels raise and increase usage, it's going to, over time, fail. So we do need to keep it on our radar. If I can apply for grant funding, what this project would do would be to remove that wall and put riprap in, and just stabilize the shoreland that way. So yes, it's been on the project list for quite some time, but I think, being that it's there, we do need to really look at what DNR can offer us as well there, so.
Okay. Excellent. Yep, that would be helpful. Anybody have questions on the seawall replacement? Not, I think we're good on that as well. Okay, so Parks is our last presenter today. We've worked our way through them all. We're even done an hour early. So we'll take a couple weeks to go ahead and rank these. Our next meeting to review our scores is July 13th. That's a Wednesday. So we'll want to go ahead and get our rankings in. Marianne, when would you want those by? Would you want them by the 8th, maybe?
I put July 7th on there.
July 7th, okay.
It's a Wednesday.
Okay, yep. So July 7th, if we could all get them to Marianne. There is a paper scoring matrix that they handed out if we wanted to do it that way. There's also a fillable Excel spreadsheet that's available. There's a automated version that you can bring it up, click edit, and it'll let you fill those squares. So, and it's got formulas in it, so it adds itself up as well. So if you are looking for a little faster method than paper sheets, feel free to complete that as well. And I think that was emailed out yesterday
Yes,
or
correct.
today, so that's in everybody's email. Anybody have questions all about the scoring process?
Yeah, just
Go ahead.
a quick comment. You said July 7th, and on your booklet it says July 6th. So which would you
The
like?
7th, please. I'll take it whenever you're done with it.
Okay, all right, let's target for the 7th, because that then gives Emily a full week to tabulate and get them all entered and get the packets out for our next one, so. Okay, if nobody has anything else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Motion by Gail, second by Martins. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Nobody ever is. We'll stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.